I shot myself in the hand with a nail gun, and I'm holding it up in front of me, and the guy that I'm working with, he was like, he pulls it out, and I'm a musician, and all I'm thinking about is, we have a show Saturday, like, what the fuck?
All right, welcome to episode 14. We are here to talk about religion, politics, and any other confrontational thing. Just kidding. We are Permanent Zip. We are working to make engineers easier to access in the small project market. I am Kenny with Carter, and we are here with Cliff Ringenberg, Ringenberg Construction, talking about all kinds of things. Go to our website, permanentzip.com, get a price on your MEP in seconds. Let us know how that works for you. And here we are today.
All right. No problem Friday.
As I sneak around the corner here, we're here to talk about coordination and construction with Cliff Ringenberg, who's done plenty of coordination things. That was one of the early projects we've done. I was very impressed with how you approach construction in general. Very proactive, very collaborative, especially on a project like that, which was design bid, which you're not, I'm used to contractors looking at the drawings for problems that they can capitalize on later. Not all my contractor friends out there, but y'all know we all know what we do in this business.
You know who you are.
I know that Cliff doesn't operate that way, so why don't you we'll start that way. Tell us a little bit about yourself and like how your approach to construction.
I've been in commercial construction since 1999, right out of high school. Started from the ground up as a laborer, worked my way up to commercial carpenter, foreman, into a project superintendent, started working for a larger firm in the state of Virginia. Running multi-million-dollar projects as a superintendent. I was 27 years old. And by the time I was 30, I thought there was a different way to do business. There was a lot of, just like what you're describing, people waiting to capitalize on what was wrong with the drawing or excuses why something couldn't get done. And if you know it, if you can identify it and know it, then you should share it. And so I just jumped out on my own, leap of faith, and started as really doing sub work, whatever I could do, and then it eventually moved into single prime contracts with the relationships with design teams, developers, owners that I had previously had, and that's our approach. We try to partner with the right people that, they have an idea or a vision. We're experts, and we want to help them achieve their goal without adversarial pointing finger, why we can't do something, why this was missed, and that's just our approach. So,
yeah, it's easy things become finger pointing very quickly in this industry, and so this is why coordination is the topic, because nobody would say out loud that coordination is not important. It's important, but I think everybody disagrees necessarily on who's responsible for what parts of it, and so we were just exploring it with everybody. And architects' opinion of coordination is much different than yours. And architects, like, I just can't stand that the lights are in the same ceiling, and that's true, but that probably would bother you less than seeing like a duct or something that's just not going to work. Where a lot of architects have these ideas that are great ideas, but the tolerances in construction are down to almost nothing, and the probability of that idea being a success goes almost to zero. And yet they want us to draw it, and then somebody like a contractor, like, how do you want me to source these materials? How do you expect me to find somebody in this market that can even do this? And even if all of that works out, can I build it for you? I don't know. And you want me to price it. And so that opinion of coordination is very different. I'm just guessing the contractor, can I price it and can I build it? Like, tell me what you expect.
Right.
In a good set of drawings,
For me, it's twofold. I mean, there are certain projects that require that level of design work, pre-construction from a design level, municipality, school, government. These budgets are set up to allocate enough dollars in engineering, architecture to do much better.
Glad you said that.
And so in that arena, it makes sense for that process. Invest in the design team, get as much as you can possibly get because the budget's there for it. And and then competitive bid it and go down the road. And then you have a different class of projects, a different class of developers, business owners, entrepreneurs that, they don't necessarily need to spend that type of budget. And as long as the overall concept and design is identified and there's a team put together, that's the best approach. And what happens is I think most of the work is in that bracket of maybe overspending in too much design for something that the contractor's still going to come back and identify all these things that they could have identified. They just weren't due diligent, and just to satisfy an owner or developer who didn't, the metric of what they're chasing is maybe different, They want to spend less, it's just a different approach. So I think there's room for each bracket to have its thing. I think the majority bracket is people want more for less, and they don't accept the idea that you could actually select a group of people to put a team together to work through everything where everybody is helping everybody. It's reciprocated versus, well, I'm going to pay the least amount I can for design. I'm going to shop a bunch of contractors, and I'm going to dictate to the contractor and the design team what we're going to build. And not knowing that up front is harder than knowing that up front and being a reciprocated working environment. So
we have one. In our market, we're small, like commercial and that kind of thing, and it's easy to be squeezed on fees. Mm-hmm. And so we try to communicate, well, what does that mean? And that usually means coordination is live during construction. And so we'll delegate some efforts to the contractor or whatever. We ideally have a contractor that's already a partner so that they know what, we're going, design bid versus design build set of drawings type thing. Mm-hmm. And there's never enough money to pay us to detail or even just think about it. Like the amount of time, I know because you always have to solve problems, and you've solved many complicated problems. I know how much goes into solving those problems. It's hours and hours of time. And the fee that we have, let's say it's $20,000 fee. That is basically analyzing loads, consulting how the space is going to be used, figuring out the equipment, roughly where it's going to go, and roughly how the duct goes. It is not guaranteeing that we thought or saw a beam for 20 grand. That is a $70,000 project. And that's where like the municipality, this and that, they have budgets for the VDC and all of that. But in the light commercial market, it's really hard to describe that without sounding like we just say we don't do coordination at all. That's not true. We're not necessarily vacant of all thought of coordination. It's just that we were paid to give you how big this thing needs to be, what features it needs to handle it, how is it conforming to the code.
Yeah.
And the details of how it gets installed, we need to trust the contractor that gets hired to help figure that out, and that they know going into it that that's what they're looking at.
Yeah.
Right. I think it's where there's maybe a lack of pre-construction services.
Yes.
That whatever.
Yeah,
some general contractor that will go to a job, walk a space, collect limited data. The architect goes out, collects the data that they're only paid to do. MEP guys are collecting data that they're only required to do, and nobody's removed a ceiling tile in an existing space. Mm-hmm. And so some of that is, I would say we're diligent in trying to scrub the job and that sort of thing. And it's really because we're trying to prevent an outfall of a bunch of errors. If we we find something, we want to point it out, we want to address it. Mm-hmm. If the client doesn't want to listen, or the design team doesn't want to listen, how much further do we would want to even go?
Yeah.
And so at a certain point, I think it's maybe right now it's like a cost of doing business on the light commercial side, where they just want to pay X amount to get a permit set ready, and nobody really does the right investigation of what they need to do in order to sell a complete project. It's not about costing too much or being over budget. It's more about, we're all professionals, and I'm genuinely giving advice that people should take heed to.
Yeah.
Much like other people that care in our industry of architects, engineers, et cetera. and it's hard to continue down a road when one side you have to feed the beast, right? We're all in business. We all have to continue to pay the bills, keep the staff that we've invested in, and who makes up the team. And there's a fine line of that, but ideally, that pre-construction time is just critical. And if you're not paying attention, and it's ultimately going to cost them in the long run, and it's preventable. It's preventable stuff. So I'm an advocate for it. It doesn't change whether they pay me pre-construction services or not. Generally, when I go to a property, I'm collecting as much data as I can, and I'm trying to convey as much as I can to the design team.
I think there's an assumption that engineers know more about construction than we do.
Right.
And engineers would never admit that because we're supposed to. We're specifying things for construction, but the reality is we know the most about the code than anybody. We read it at least 2 hours a day, at least. And that's not the case for everybody else. They're building it all day long. It's not to say contractors are unfamiliar with the code. They are. But it's not like engineers are completely unfamiliar with construction. We're just nowhere close to the knowledge of somebody who builds it as their career. And so there's potentially an ego problem with engineers that just don't want to admit this. I would rather say it out loud and say, listen, I trust your judgment about whether this is feasible or not. We were just talking about the tap, what's it called? The tap
rule.
Yeah, so walk us through that, because that's a good example of an engineer having no clue what your idea was versus.
Yeah, so we've got a project where we got a 400 amp fuse disconnect that's going to two 200 amp main breaker panels, and the panels are existing. They're just refeeding them, and we were thinking through. There's two parallel sets of 250 leaving the 400 amp disconnect going to two 200 amp panels. Well, each panel needs 250, but you can't just feed the two panels 250 because then the tap rule starts at the fuse disconnect, which is more than 25 feet away. So we're thinking, how do we get 400 amps at right before the panel where we need to tap it, right? And the first thing that me and Benoit could come across was this bust, what do you call it? Bust gutter or something. It's like a couple $1,000 thing that's applicable for like a 4,000 amp service, but it made sense from an engineering perspective. I called the contractor, and he said he was going to use clear taps, and I'm like Googling it as he's saying, like, what the hell's a clear tap, and it does the same thing, but like we would expect something that was way like overpriced just because it worked from an engineering perspective, but we didn't even know that a clear tap was an option, and that's where we're at. We need to be able to lean on each other for that type of advice.
Right. And I'm a commercial carpenter, so most of that was like this.
Yeah. Our listeners, hopefully they're electrical. So basically the summary is this nerd specified something super expensive that the other builder nerd was like, why the hell would you do that? This is like $10 versus $3,000.
Yeah.
Right.
But we would have no clue about that. We just don't know.
It's the same what we're all talking about. We're a general contractor, the subcontractor community, from whether it's an architectural detail, a product that's being used or specified, or a unique way to tap into an existing service to run two new services. It's the subcontractor community, it's the vendors, suppliers, like us working together to get to that, knowing the load calculations, what the requirements are, and what today's code is that could vary and change over courses of time.
Yeah.
That's one aspect of it, but the guy that's been doing it for 40 years and can express this other option rather than RFI, there's a problem, you need to solve it, and say, this is what we should do as a collective team. What do you think? And that's all. It's the same kind of thing.
I think a lot of engineers solve the problems they're presented as if it's. I guess Phil always says, if every problem you see is, if all you have is a hammer, every problem you see is a nail, something like that.
Yeah.
If we're asked an RFI, mechanical engineer is going to solve it with mechanical engineering when it could just be add a window that can open and close. It could be a building.
Right.
It could be solved elsewhere. And so that's where the whole team kind of needs to come to play and
get the intent.
Yeah. I think the load calculation stuff, like for me, I was told, I don't know how old I was. It was a long time ago. And somebody said, I laid something out wrong. I was just a carpenter. And he's like, plans are diagrammatic. And I mean, I took away from that's exactly what it is. It's everything's diagrammatic. It's not, you have this thing that you can draw straight lines and you can show these details, but it's not going to apply 100% like that in real life. And our responsibility is to make that happen.
Yeah.
And it would be in coordination with, I don't know what size the water meter needs to be based on this DFU calculation. I mean, I can look up a chart and try, but you know, when I look at the duct routing ways, I mean, unless it's like a full scale big project that's got BIM modeling included, it's our job to kind of coordinate with our subcontractors, their suppliers and fabricators, and then the sequence of the work, you know, by priority. You know, a water line should never be in the way of a mechanical duct run. You know, it's like,
yeah. And we'll draw that kind of stuff, and it looks foolish in hindsight. And I think it makes it appear like engineering is the best thing I can describe to people is ductwork when we draw it is about 5 to 10% of the total effort. But it's like 90 to 100% of yours. Aside from getting a crane to set the RTU, the rest is ductwork and maybe refrigerant piping. So the installation of the ductwork is everything to that trade contractor. And so there's a perception that that's what we design. We don't. That's not engineering. It's understanding how velocity goes through the duct and how to size it. That's engineering, sure. I mean, but we are so focused on this abstract thing. And I just been describing it as removing moisture from air. It's easy to make us colder, easier. But taking moisture out of the air, this is this abstract thing that nobody really sees. You feel it. You don't even know when you feel too much moisture in a cold room why you are uncomfortable. But you see it inside the wall when mold starts to grow, or your inventory at a restaurant starts to rot faster or grow mold on it. And that's what the engineer is doing. And that in mechanical is highly focused on energy code compliance.
building envelope.
Yeah,
You need a basis of design. How many windows? What's the R value? What's the, what is the actual building envelope? Well, I mean, we struggle with that from just a contractor standpoint before you get into HVAC is like air equals moisture. So if you don't have a good envelope and air is coming in, that's, a problem. That's step one.
Yeah.
If we build it the way it was supposed to, or it was intended to be, along with the design, it should work, should create enough positive pressure to, keep everything out. But
nobody wants to put something that will guarantee positive pressure because it costs money.
Right.
We talked to Kendrick yesterday. Kendrick Richardson, a great architect from DC, up in DC, really cool co-working spot. Yeah. And I was asking about value engineering and where do you look? And he's like, the first place we go is MEP. And then it's funny because SMBW told us the first thing that's ever complained about week one is MEP. So why is the thing that's complained about the most, that's presenting the highest level of risk to all of us, being the first thing on the chopping block? We should all band together and say, all right, hold harmless agreement. If there's no such thing as value engineering, it's devalue engineering and it's feature reduction. So we have to communicate that to our clients and the buyer to say, you aren't getting something for free. Nothing in this world is free. If you want $100,000 out of your HVAC budget, you're going to destroy your building. And I need you to acknowledge our engineers have said that to you so that when it's destroyed, it's your
because
decision.
it's legal. It's legal to do so.
Yeah, it's legal. It's not illegal to be uncomfortable. There's no code requirement other than heating.
Right.
That makes it say that, I'm uncomfortable in this space. Zoning. You know how expensive it is to give dedicated zones to all of this. And you can, quote, over-engineer it. But the bigger problem is that value engineering, I only go down the road. I've been telling this to people. I will only do it if every email and every conference call uses the word feature reduction so that we are training ourselves to understand we're not getting something for free. It is actually reducing functionality. And that functionality usually is moisture removal capability out of the HVAC. And so that's just been weird. So I'm curious to ask you, because it's what I understand talking to people. The first thing in budget that's taken off is MEP, lights, lighting packages, and HVAC. It's really expensive to do it right. And then we were told that the first calls you ever get are related to MEP. So is that true? Can you confirm these are two different people?
That's pretty true.
Yeah. All right, we're on to something.
Here we go.
Yeah. That's pretty true. I mean, VEing a lighting package is maybe different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the stuff that we run into when we're trying to value engineer, a project is in some cases that $100,000 difference can make or break the deal for a developer. So we try to be transparent with it. If we get communicated something from a subcontractor like, well, we don't actually need to do it this way, we could use this different manufacturer and so on. And then we run it past the engineer, and the engineer's kind of like, well, yeah, I guess it works, but that's not what we really specified. And then they're diligent in trying to communicate that to the owner. They don't necessarily care. They just know that it's going to come down $100,000. They're going to get approved for whatever lending they've got going on, and the project's going to go forward. And then a year later, when it is a problem, when the space is rented out, leased out, or they're operational with it, and they're like, well, it's getting too hot in here. That's when we get a call, and if there wasn't a real good RFI, correspond change condition, documented, they never remember. They don't even remember that.
Or it's somebody else, or it's just not even that person who agreed in the first place. It's their employee, or they've left and it's somebody else.
Right.
That's a huge one that we're hitting on. I'm noticing as a pattern. We are the first to be cut in terms of what we've designed, and then we're the first to be complained about. So there's a problem.
And I think there's a medium, though. I think it's like once the contractor selected or the subcontractor selected, maybe there's more dialogue. Maybe there's more work session between the engineer and the actual MEP trade that's saying, hey, couldn't we do this? And, despite the factor of trying to capture, whatever the error percentage is from an engineering standpoint, right? Like your factor of error, what is the compromise? And then, is it a more stern conversation with the developer or the client of what the ramifications are going to be based on this? And, because, case in point, the electrical contractor pointed out something that you just learned about. And it's no different than there might be something that was specified because he went to some new workshop and they have this new thing that the guy that's been doing it for 40 years has never seen it.
Yeah.
So I really do think it's really just more of having people who care and a collaboration of what's happening. Ultimately, all of the stuff we're talking about, it really is more of a people issue and less of a technical issue.
Yeah.
If I had the horn, I'd hit that right now. Can you reach it?
I got you.
A delay. It's muted.
No, it's down.
It's way delayed.
If people would care as much to take time out of our day to have a conversation like we're having right now,
Yep.
you have a very small percentage of people that, just through, I guess, over time, things have changed, but the percentage of people that want it, get it, care, share how they feel about things or take the time selflessly to do stuff, things would be better. And it's across the board in every industry,
Our engineers are at a disadvantage there because we're not the most gifted in the communication skill aspect. There's some engineers that can, and then most engineers would rather just sit behind their computer and never talk to a single human and just solve problems as if they're just their own self-gratifying little world of problem solving. And then the idea of getting somebody else involved is a nuisance. Even me, who outwardly appears to be social, struggles to be like, all right, I gotta fucking talk to this person. I'd rather just write, sit here and just like watch YouTube
RFI response.
Yeah. But I know that the solution is people, or the problem is people based, and it
is. You don't have to be a genius. It's about, you don't have to be the best communicator. You just have to really care. And that's really it. I mean,
yeah.
That's a common theme. And you mentioned that, like trying to call out, if you see something, it's like, I just want to make it right. That seems to be a common theme between the contractors that we enjoy working with and that do good work, is that they're not trying to catch somebody in a mistake. Everybody makes mistakes. Like that's what the whole team is for. But just like, hey, I noticed this, can we do it this way or that way versus, oh, I can't wait to change order this.
Right.
I'm not saying that all the contractors are like that, but that's how it goes.
Well, some of it has to do with, even within the body of the contracting company or the engineering or architecture firm, you've got a 20-person, 50-person staff. There's only a small percentage that are really going to be that caring enough, detailed, knowledgeable enough to then be able to convey it to the other party. And that other party only also has, 5 or 6 guys that really care, want to get it out of the 20, 30 people. So, there can be a misalignment where an employee is not necessarily the best representation of how the company represents itself. But again, that all lies with a people thing, and
we've struggled with that. With engineering, it's hard to find people that are engineers. Then it's hard to find people that are building and construction engineers. And then it's hard to find those that have decided to become mechanical engineers or electrical engineers. When you choose mechanical or electrical, the last thing you're thinking is, I'm going to do buildings. You're thinking, I'm going to do the next Tesla or Boeing. That's why they choose that. And so you're not thinking, I'm going to put rectangular long squares of metal throughout the building. That's not at all what you're thinking.
Well, take it a step further. You're 4 or 5 layers deep. Now you got to find one of those people that can communicate with other people without sounding licensed. Like a dork. That's licensed, that people can trust. Because you can be the smartest person in the world, but you know this. If you can't communicate it to the client in a way that they can trust, you might as well not be smart at all.
Right.
One trick we use is when I realize that I'm getting technical is to stop and say, hey, let the nerd talk to the nerd.
Yeah.
You can listen to the nerds if you want, but I just need to talk to the electrician.
Yeah.
Just let me be the nerd to the nerd, and we'll figure this out. Like, he knows the tap rule, he knows this grouping of disconnects, and he understands like all arc fault current and bus ratings and all these other things. If I said to you, you may understand, but if I said directly to your client, it's like, what the hell? Why am I even doing this?
Yeah, I think being like in my position, I would be able to step back, observe that exchange, and wait for the resolution of what, and then try to take that and convey it to the client or the architect or whatever.
Yeah, and then at least advocate. Now you're advocating to say the engineer and the electrician have decided, they are competent, they know what they're doing, they had this great plan, and you can generally describe it. And so now it's been filtered. But the nerds need to talk together, because this RFI chain thing goes up to the PM at some architectural firm to look at first, to us. It's this weird contract trail, and there's no solution there. I just write an answer, and it just pisses everybody off, because it's like, well, follow my spec, which says do this, this, and this. And they're like, wow, that's bullshit. That's cover your ass.
Right.
Shit
Right.
right there. And that one 20-minute conversation
solves. Well, that's a skill too on the GC side, is being able to filter that and know, okay, I'm going to let these guys handle it, or okay, this is when I'm going to go to the client. This is what I'm going to say to the client. They don't have to be involved in every single conversation.
Yeah. And in some cases where the MEP firms are working directly for the general prime of the design team, like the architects.
Yeah.
And us having to actually formalize an RFI that goes to the architect, that it'd be nice sometimes that they just push that through versus like, well, no. And they almost, maybe create they ask another question, and by the time I get a response, it's not really actually responded to.
Well, we might take a week to get you an answer, which is another question.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you're like, what?
Right.
Whereas if you just called me and you do, and Kurt Yartz from Urban Core does, there's a couple people that are just genuinely, Jason Guillot is a developer who's good with this.
Yeah.
He's from Tallheimer, and he's good with understanding generally when a phone call needs to be made. We were talking on the way up here. Yeah. Kurt Yartz will understand when I'm talking to him, when it's time to get a 3-way call. But you know what? Hey, can I call the plumber right now?
Right.
Boom. And he knows like that means I'm getting a solution right now. Because I guess you can explain it to everybody, but I would only guess that in your position, solving any one problem means 15,000 phone calls.
Right.
Go through just your average basic problem that comes up in construction. What does that involve in the communication? Look at it.
Can't even start the answer.
He can't even answer.
How much longer do we got?
Yeah. I mean, part of it is because there are different brackets of projects. You have a more sophisticated where the owner has paid a little bit more design and CA services, and the hierarchy and structure of the project is is more formalized and different. Then you have a smaller job, so whatever, it's a pizza shop or something much smaller where, you generated a set of drawings 3 months ago. Nobody's ever said anything to you. And then you get a phone call from the superintendent about something that you didn't even know that the owner approved a different type of exhaust fan because it was, $5,000 cheaper. And so, I mean, it really depends on, I guess, the team understanding what the hierarchy is based on those projects. I think the challenge really is more about the ebb and flow of that. I've done large projects where literally the owner acts as the architect and they're approving everything. I've also worked on large projects where I've got to go through this multi-tiered process. So, there's not enough time in a day to list all the problems, but I think, having an understanding of how the job is set up and what the intent is. If you're asked to do a permit set of drawings, don't expect a phone call unless there's like a code issue. The inspector comes out and says, this doohickey's not in, you need to add it. And we got to get an extra $1,000 from the client to do that. And so we need you to draw a sketch or send an email.
You said permit set of drawings. I got to say, I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm only kind of really now understanding that. I think that people that understand what that means take it for granted. Walk us through what you see, permit set drawings.
What I see when I am requesting a permit set, and this is just me and us, I literally want the fastest thing generated that can satisfy whatever city or municipality to be able to say, this checks the boxes, here's your permit. Without even the intent of the layout being that, the product that's specified being that. Literally, we just have to get that building permit. If it's a more sophisticated job, obviously it's more critical. We want to do amendment drawings and we want to incorporate what we're changing in a submittal process, et cetera. But on a build out or, TI or renovation, we literally just need to get a building permit, and we try not to even mess with the design team, of course, until we VE'd something that we didn't tell you about, and then we have to call you because there's a problem.
That actually brings up something interesting. This is what I've been advocating for. Like you said, we need pre-con during design. I think the engineering team, remember, this is the first thing that gets VE'd and the first thing that's complained about. So you being there at the early step was great. But the other side, the first kickoff meeting, to just describe to the team where we were guessing, like what our assumptions were when we did this, and what's important not to be taken out, just to kind of be like, hey, and also to introduce ourselves to your trades, to build trust, because so it doesn't become a shit show of like, oh, these fucking engineers are always, they don't know what they're doing, this and that, this ductwork's never going to work. Just to kind of say, hey, I'm Kenny, here's my experience, here's my knowledge, here's how I approach this. I know that this is a question over here in this part of the building, but we didn't know because a wall was here, so we're guessing this. You might want to start there. And also, this piece of equipment is a long lead time thing, I know, so that one's important. We had one just come up on the Wednesday thing. They're just now telling us they have an issue with this DOAS thing that we specified as a lead time, but you've had the drawings 3 months. The 3-month lead time could have been problem solved if early on I was able to be at that meeting to tell the contractor, don't VE this.
Right. Yeah.
This one's needed. And now they're in hot water. We don't know how to solve that problem because like you can't bring untempered air at that level of ventilation rate without destroying everything.
The other thing that's not intentional that has occurred is certain cities, they don't actually require MEP drawings upon a certain size or change of use. And so that has led to some of the stuff that we do that don't require it. And if it's a critical area, we will pay a company to do pre-tabs, pre-inspection. We present that to the client like, this is in our budget, this has to be done. You don't own the building. So we'll try to do like a pre-tab, pre-inspection, get a report generated before we even start any construction to collect the data. But that doesn't always happen, and it doesn't always prove anything.
Yeah.
We finished a job over a year ago. Everything's been fine. It's a medical building, and hot water wasn't coming on demand fast enough. So between property management, facilities, the building owner, the tenant, you know, you have this hierarchy. We were just working for the tenant, you know, and so it doesn't work. So it's not hot enough. It's not getting hot fast enough. And so then the tenant calls the property manager calls the building owner, and the building owner basically is like, well, you guys did something wrong. You broke it. You know? Well, I mean, I don't know, for a year and a half, everybody's been using it just fine. So this was a situation where it's a good client of ours, and we ended up sending the plumber out. It was a bad recirculation pump. Existing equipment from a building that was built 10 years ago, and it just was what it was. We swapped it out, but, you know, some of the stuff is pre-existing conditions. You know, we don't have control over that. What the lifespan is on that board, or what that, you know, existing exhaust fan, or, you know, things like that. So it's hard. And this is more for build outs and existing buildings. You know, new constructions is different.
Yeah.
We do a lot of renovation work. So, and I think that's where some of it is all new renovation, new systems, new MEP systems. Some of it is working in occupied, pre-existing conditions, and you know, trying to navigate that.
That's tough. How do you price that? Because I always tell people it costs money to save money. So to try to reuse a system is a lot more complicated for an engineer.
It's real easy. We just exclude it.
Yeah.
We exclude the responsibility and liability of the pre-existing equipment.
Yeah.
You know, we'll put an adder for a pre-check, pre-inspection, or tabs. And I did a restaurant where I moved one restaurant equipment, mechanical, makeup, air, you know, everything, to another location, and it was bad. And I didn't have anything to protect myself or the company at that moment. And so ever since then, I had, anytime we do that, I want testing and air balancing done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or some type of pre-check inspection, whatever. It's $100, $1,000, whatever it is not worth replacing expensive equipment that now your contractor's at fault.
Yeah.
And we try to protect them as well. It's a collaboration. We don't just push everything on the subcontractor.
Did you move it to a new location in the same building, or it was physically to a different tenant?
Literally
spot?
from one block over. They had bought a building from a leased space to a new building.
Yeah.
And
and who knows what things varied? Was it the same size hood? Was the duct route the same? The static pressure? Is there VFD on there? And I mean, there's all this nerdy. Again, where we are, that's all the abstract, right? We are my checklist of what's the horsepower of the fan? What's the static pressure in that duct? Is this fan going to work? What's the route? What are the assumptions? And none of that is the way the duct is laid out.
right.
None of it.
Right.
So I need to make a graphic. I think that our trade partners think that the Venn diagram of the installation and the engineering is a lot closer to a circle. It's really two rings very far apart where they intersect in a small area. They understand some concepts of engineering, and we understand some concepts of construction. And I think our egos are getting in the way. Like the engineers want to try to sell that we know more about construction than we do, and that the trades want to sell that they know more about engineering than they do. And if we were to be truthful about it, we could solve problems better. Say, like, you know more than I could possibly imagine about how the hell this is going to get put in. That I can run circles around in code in any day. You know?
That really nails down to humans treating humans the same. I mean, it's no different than, well, an engineer is not better than a mechanical guy.
Yep.
We're the same.
Yep.
So you're a laborer digging a trench, or you're the owner that walks on the job.
Yeah.
I mean, having that respect.
Yeah.
There is no hierarchy of what we do. And, you know, if that person wants to be a drywall finisher, and that's, you know, they love that, they do that, they're no different than the guy that's owning the building. And it parallels to what you're talking about. It's not about, it's an ego thing. It's you know, wherever you're short, and I'm better maybe at that task, I should be able to uplift you and help you, and vice versa. You know, and it's just a.
I was on site at the podcast with Jacob and the electrician. As soon as he found out I was an engineer, I hate
you damn engineers.
Damn engineer. It pissed me. And he was like, "Y'all just think because you got a degree, you're like better than everybody." And I'm like, "Well, I don't think that."
Right.
I actually, my degree, I use less than 5% of it.
Yeah.
Nothing I learned in college, I do here in construction. So I don't think my degree makes me qualified. My experience does, and I have an insecurity about my knowledge of construction. I wish I knew as much as you did, and so I personally don't feel that way, but I think engineers maybe come across that way. I don't know. In your experiences, do you get the vibe from engineers they have like a sense of pretension?
I think it's a people thing. I've worked with you guys, and I've never felt that. You know, we've been able to collaborate, do work sessions. I have other engineers where I'm trying to recommend a constructability item, and I'm just an idiot that doesn't know anything.
Yeah.
How dare I? You know, and it's I think it still does boil down to people. It's it's the people issue. It's the you know, whether it's the ego, entitlement, selfish, self-centered. That's really what it's about. That's what's holding, you know, that dynamic back. And it literally is people not being, you know, attuned, in touch with themselves as people. You don't have to be the best engineer. I don't have to be the best contractor, you know? And it's just a matter of trying to work through things, respect one another, help one another. It's very simple, you know? Don't overthink it.
Yeah.
People is a thing that I never thought would be the most important thing. When I first started Permit Zip, I'm thinking, how can I scale this? How can I make solutions that are big programs that can solve all these problems? And as an engineer, you never really, I don't speak for all engineers, but I personally underestimated how important people skills and soft skills are in life, emotional intelligence, and being able to control and regulate yourself, you know, and how, you know, the stress of the industry, like how important that is, how to deal with conflict as it starts to rise up. You can make it worse very quickly. And it's like we've been saying, kind of how doctors do no harm. If things start to get stressful in a conversation, assume no malice, do no harm. Just try to find ways to get yourself to not be brought into that state and give yourself some space. And that I would never have guessed it would have been one of the most fundamental skills to have in this industry when I started. Yeah. How do you deal with conflict when it comes up?
I think everybody's not everybody. You have people who are avoidant. You have people who are like in your face aggressive. And so I try to balance it. I would probably say I'm more of an avoidant, you know, just being completely transparent. When there's conflict, there's what is the conflict? What is the conflict about? Is it a people emotional thing, or is it really just a technical coordination thing? You know, so depending on what that is the approach to try to find a solution to it. You know, I mean, it's definitely, in most cases, it's really people.
Yeah, and starting off with that trust. Stuart Evans from Evans Constructions, they call it trust hurdles. Working to just overcome trust hurdles. And I like that image because when we're working with a trade contractor, there's that trust hurdle. Yeah. I'm insecure about my knowledge of construction. And you may think that I'm a pretentious 4-year school educated, you know, dick that's just going to be shitty to you. And so if we can overcome that and just be like, oh yeah, you're just a normal dude that I would just, you know, bullshit with on the, you know, outside drinking a beer and just give you, you know, that just, you're a person at the end of the day. You just went to school here and you went to school here. I mean, it's not like the trades don't have a rigorous education program. The journeyman, the whole process to get to like master electrician, that's as rigorous as it is to go to school. In fact, probably more difficult, especially physically. Our fingers are no blisters, but the education is a long process there. It's regulated, all of that. And so I don't know. It's just before you go into it, you don't know who you're dealing with. And, you know.
Yeah, I think I think naturally we have to survive, and we want to protect ourselves from whatever. And fear is that counterbalance of not trusting. And so, all of that stuff gets, built up, and it's all avoidable, preventable. Some of it has to do with being trusting. You don't know this individual really, and you have to trust, and that will eliminate or reduce the fear, any fear. And once they break the trust is about the point when you can throw your defense mechanism up and say, okay, well, I'm not going to continue to allow, this negative thing to impact me. And in some cases it's too late. You're under contract. But generally that's really, we don't really do any marketing, business development. It literally is who we want to work with and help based on a dialogue, a referral, and we're not chasing the metric of the biggest project that we can get, or more revenue, or how can we get this percentage more XYZ. It really is about surrounding ourselves with people that we want to work with first, and then just as a company internally, and then
who would be that? Who is your ideal person you want to work with?
From a specific
kind of client, like the type of characteristics that you might look
somebody for. That is understanding and automatic trusting based on results that we've proven, or past experiences we've had, or referrals, that we're not a contractor trying to get a change order. We're literally trying to utilize our skill set, utilize the resource from the design teams, and prevent them from whatever their investment is. And that's where we're focused at. That's what we're trying to protect and help. And so basically people that want to be helped, and not necessarily people that just, you might as well have start your own general contracting company, or, create your own design firm.
I think there's a stigma with contractors. You just mentioned it, about just looking for the low bid change order stuff. And that's a trust hurdle you probably got to fight through quite a bit.
That's what you described is easier to do with design build. How do you navigate that? The fact that you guys are wanting to make sure it's done right. You're collaborating with a design team. How do you manage that on a design bid type of project?
So on projects where we are shortlisted, because we don't actually go after any public stuff or anything like that. So whatever, there's multiple bidders in the situation. It's a craft. So it depends on, do we really want to get this project or help this client? And was it based on a referral, or they just found us and threw our name in the cap? Not that we would have an advantage or disadvantage, just we don't know the individual. I'll try to do my research. So pre-bid RFIs are, and the qualifications that I would typically type up for a proposal that we would submit, or bid we would submit, are where I'm at with it. So let's say there's a structural sheet, and it doesn't show a concrete footing underneath a brand new stair shaft, for example. Well, plans and specs that 12 cubic yard plus excavation or whatever it's going to take really shouldn't be in anybody's bid. And if I pre-bid RFI it, now I've just told the competition,
That's right. So everybody gets walk us through that. So you're talking about what happens on bid, and you have this pre-bid stuff that happens. Can you tell us about that?
So on the pre-bid RFIs, they typically will give you a date on a more formal RFP process to submit any pre-bid RFIs. And there are things like that. Some of the stuff is common, like, well, what working hours can we have? Or, when do you think the project's going to start? And then there's more specific things like, this detail on this sheet does not correlate with, what's shown on this other sheet. What is this? Or the door hardware on the plans is different than what's in the specs. Yeah. What's the overriding thing? So I'll admit I've definitely been part of those processes and as detailed as I thought I was at a bid, certainly seen a list of pre-bid RFI questions and responses that I didn't see.
Yeah, you're like, oh shit, glad you asked that.
Right. Like, wow, I missed that one.
Yeah.
But I'm typically more reserved. I will post a couple, but I'll typically, unless it's a ridiculous bid form where you just have to lump sum a number, they don't give you an opportunity to present something.
Yeah.
I'll try to pick and choose as to what. Well, we have not included this foundation underneath the stairwell in our base bid. However, please add, X amount of dollars to the base bid to capture it. Because I'm also not trying to throw a design team under the bus either.
Yeah, because then maybe your partners, it's such a weird industry.
But it's like common sense. It's like, well, if we're building a 3-story stairwell, there's going to be a foundation to it. I don't know what size it is. I'm going to assume it's going to be, 2 foot by 5 foot, whatever I come up with or whatever I've communicated with the sub community that has asked the question.
Yeah.
And so I'll pick and choose that dynamic of what I'm including is how much, or we've included it and it's not shown.
Yeah.
Or it's not shown and we have not included it. So it depends on the reception I think I'm going to get, and if we're just going to get shopped out and they're going to take all my
work,
my stuff and share it to the competition, or try to level that. Even when I say, well, it's going to cost an X amount more, they can go back to the 5 guys and say, well, how much would it cost for the footing?
Now you got that.
And so they can add that in, and so at that point, I don't even really enjoy that process at all. I'm fine with interviewing with the client and seeing who they are and sharing who we are.
Yeah.
And if it gets to a certain, after a certain point, if the developers are going to spend the money, if you're going to do this project, it's going to cost that amount.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what 10 electricians we call or concrete companies we call. Yeah. Everybody that's got the right scope should be plus or minus 2 to 5% rough order of magnitude.
We just talked about that. Yeah.
It's
like you hire the low guy.
It's really more about who do you want to work with, and why.
Yeah. How do you subcontract a lot of work, and so you have to do the same process even if you've been awarded. You go through this bid process, and
so that's another thing that I think we're different with. When I'm doing when I get an RFP, we solicit it out. We subcontract everything out. We're really a construction management company. Yeah. So I'm doing concrete takeoffs. I'm doing drywall takeoffs. I'm getting bids in, and I'm how do we go from 150,000 to 250,000 and have these guys in the middle and a real low guy and a real high guy, and I'm like, well, I don't automatically cancel them out. I'll call this low guy and say, hey, what's the total linear footage of 7/8 hat channel you have on the 8th floor?
Yeah.
I want to talk to the estimator, and
nerd talk to nerd.
I'm just trying to understand what and why.
Yeah.
Who am I to say why they can be that much lower? Maybe they own their own equipment. They own their own crane or pump truck, or
they've missed a huge thing. Then you get tied up in construction, and they can't front the $100,000 bill. And you're
so the whole bid leveling process. It's really more about just making sure that the subs are not missing something, and because I'm trying to sell a complete project to the client. I don't want to use this guy and go, oh shit, we missed $100,000 worth of something. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
Maybe it's those 3 in the middle. Now I'm back and forth. Well, it really doesn't matter what number I use. They're all
that's
within
crazy.
What?
So think back. We have this project, and it's got a demand metering requirement because we don't own demand metering equipment. We had to get this together, and the code requires 30-day metering. Either that, or we go and itemize every single piece of equipment, and you pay $20,000 for an engineer to walk around everywhere forever. So it's either $2,000 demand metering or $20,000 of us figuring some shit out. And the demand metering is more favorable. The results always are more favorable when you meter it. Well, what you just described is a perfectly reasonable thing that could be missed from a general NEC Article 220.87 is not something that's on the forefront of your mind. So you have to trust your electrician will catch it.
Yeah.
And if they don't, now it's 30-day demand metering. They spent 9 months trying to not do 30-day demand metering. And it just got in for a pavilion. It's annoying. I get it. We call it the $1 million breaker because we can't not say that it's required. We just can't ignore it. it's a violation of our ethical duties and our legal responsibility. So we can't not do it, even no matter how many times you tell me I've done this 1,000 times,
Right.
without doing it.
Yeah.
I say I don't know what to tell you. It's literally illegal for me to know this is required and not ask for it. And so it led to a lot of problems. But you just described this complex myriad of things that you're trying to do. It's amazing. So we got to have that perspective, a better perspective.
What do you guys like? What method do you guys prefer as engineers? Like, do you like having the full turnkey where you're trying to put everything in, or more of a we've ran the calculations, here's the diagrammatic design and intent, and call us when you need us throughout the duration? I mean, is there like a preference that?
Yeah, that second is my favorite. I mean, because we're like commercial. I really love having more people that are experts around me to help make sure it's a success. And that's what design build feels like to me. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I like design build. Design bid just feels like we have to over-engineer everything to kind of cover our ass a little bit. I'd much rather be like with a team like Ringenberg and like, hey, this is what we can get. This is what we can't get. What do you think about this? We'll do this, that, or that. And then we just do it that way. And it works.
Right.
And everyone's happy. Way better.
And if it's design build, that's where I ask to be a part of the kickoff in construction. So I can at least create what feels like design. If it's design bid, right? If it goes to bid and then there's a contractor, I don't even know this person. I want to be at the kickoff so that I can simulate what design build feels like. Hey guys, here's who I am. Here's what I don't know. Here's what I do know. I'm the nerd that knows how the hell to tell you whether something's legal or not.
Yeah.
I'm the bookworm and the theory man. Okay, but y'all put this in. So if you see anything right now, tell me as soon as you can if it just doesn't make any sense. And I'm willing to hear it, because I mean, it might be $4,000 cheaper for us to move a pipe over 10 feet. I don't see that. I'll never see that.
Yeah.
And then, so if we do design bid, it's tough because in like commercial design bid is it's a struggle to do it right. There's no fee for the amount of time you need to really do it right, like you described earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly think the better approach and I would recommend it because of what I just said. The number is going to be the number.
Yeah.
If you're going to build the pizza shop, you need to know rough order of magnitude what it's going to cost you.
Yeah.
And you're going to need to partner with design team and a contractor. And so it's in that space. I would highly recommend that anybody would do that. They would basically, whether they're engaging with the design team first and the design team pulls in a short list, that happens a lot. The first step that they do is, okay, they know what lease they're going to get with their broker, and the broker turns them on to this space planner or architect, and the architect pulls in the MEP guy. And so I think the same thing should happen with the contractor. And I think, I can't control somebody's desire to just sell a fucking slice of pizza and get, they just want to get in and get out. Rent starts on this date, go.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with those folks. They have a different metric, and, it doesn't make them bad or anything. It's just different. It's harder for us to be as, emotionally invested in helping when it's really just about the money,
It's a transaction.
And so it's that's the way I prefer it. Knowing up front, hey, we're going to work with this design team, this MEP engineer, and it's up front. It's like, hey, don't spend a lot of time. Give me the load calculations that I need.
Yeah.
Once we get the subcontractors figured out, we may need to call you. Give me an allowance of what you think hour-wise you're going to spend on that. So I'm collecting bid fee proposals from structural, architectural, MEP, and not because I'm just I'm not making money off of it. It's like a straight pass through with the client, but you don't have to assume things and have to spend $20,000 on something that you could have maybe made more by spending less time providing the right data that's needed, partnering with the right group or team to execute the work.
Yeah.
And the net result is the owner's going to win. It makes it easier for us to do. You're spending less time and money. So that design cost is lower, where there's an understanding from the contractor and the subcontractors of what we're putting in place. And so we don't need all the listed XYZs. And so it's more of a, it's still on paper. It's just not as elaborate and it's still professional. And I think it's a streamlined way to do it.
Yeah. If we can get on the same page, like, do our drawings need to be something that somebody wants to put in a picture frame and hang up and they're like picture perfect, or do they just need to be something that's legal, safe, and can get the job done? And a lot of times those two things have to align with the price, right? And people want the thing that they can hang in a picture at that more permanent drawing price, like you described, and it's just it leads to conflicts.
Well, here's one of the issues with that, especially mechanical, where I described we don't have a lot of time to get the ductwork perfect, but they got to price it, especially if they're being competitive. Like they got to have something they can trust, and it gets challenging because they want to be able to trust that they can just fabricate this or send it to their fabricator Vortex and just get a price on it. And the reality is they can't quite do that yet, and the drawings aren't ready for that, but they got to get a price to you. And so to be fair, like to them, I understand that frustration, but it's that nobody paid for it.
That's the other difference between negotiating and working with a team and going through this competitive bid market. At that point, you're basically telling the contractor you're assuming all the risk. Stipulated lump sum, here's all the risk. Well, if it costs X amount for us to manage your project and we can mutually agree upon the fee, the 90%, 85% of the total cost of the project is going to be spent regardless. So, I mean, to me, it doesn't make any sense to, I guess what I'm saying is it depends on the contract vehicle that your arms are tied behind your back as well, because you have to come up with something that we can all price. Well, we all price it. So now we have this, $100,000 ductwork package, for example. Everybody's carried it. We get selected. We've taken all the risk. And then we come back and say, oh, we can save you 10 grand or 20 grand. And really they're only saving the client. They're saving 30 grand, but they're only splitting it because we're not even saying it at all. Hey, approve this. Will you approve that? And then they're just taking that VE as what, versus, if it were a negotiated cost plus, it's kind of like, well, here was the design intent. The package was $100,000. This is what our team has come up with. This package is only going to cost $50,000. Here's your $50,000 back.
Well, that really shows me that we shouldn't just be at the kickoff meeting, because it's too late to say some of that stuff to you. You've already gone through the process, selected somebody, you're carrying a risk, and then I tell you suddenly, oh yeah, there's coordination drawings required, and you're just like, what the fuck are you saying?
And I think most of in the general contracting world, I believe in the light commercial space, I believe there's a metric of an estimating department. They're constantly getting fed these bid jobs, and they're bidding X amount, and X amount are sticking. We've never done that, and I don't know what that's like. So whenever we first get referred or introduced to somebody, it's kind of like I'm trying to get to know that person. Do we want to help? Can we help? Does our timing work? Let's not overcommit to something that we can't. That they have a different need, even though we do want to help them. And I think that forces the issue of being more involved on the pre-con side. Whereas most of it is probably just, junior guys in training. They're doing digital takeoffs. They're soliciting, calling subs. They don't know anything about, what a clevis hanger is. It's just a different metric.
It makes me want to put to be somewhere in the process where we can be consulting with you to say, hey, make sure that the owner on your price has this contingency.
Right.
If we're going to be contingent on coordination drawings, which may change things, then go put it at the prime level so that you're protecting the trades.
Or have the other idea would be to, this price is subject to change. So you're asked to do a set of drawings. You can have some type of alternate or thing that basically says, everybody is to bid this no matter what. Please note, once the contractor gets selected XYZ, there'll be further developments for coordination drawings XYZ to give at least let the owner know that there is the possibility of it costing less or more. Because it doesn't always go down. Most of the time when we are trying to value engineer, it could be because something was missed or something wasn't thought about or something unforeseen had come up. And so we try to, from day one, build a contingency of value engineering and it's whatever. It's stuff like changing the color of the backsplash tile or the manufacturer or the flooring. It's not just MEPs. There's a lot of things that, well, gosh, we didn't know that this gym flooring was, $50 a square foot. Could we do something different? And it's nothing against the interior designer or the design teams. It's kind of like, it just happens. And
same problem the engineers have, even on the nerdier equipment. We don't really understand how much it is. We just know it works for what we need. And that's not our strong suit.
So we try to build the contingency. So when once we get that value savings, like on a cost plus, it goes into a pot that's the owner's. It's not ours, and it's the owner's contingency that we're trying to build. We bid the job and the cabinet guy was X and he couldn't do it 3 months later after he turned the number in. We got a new cabinet guy. We just saved the owner $30,000 just by that. And it's his money. And so we've run into a beam in the way somewhere and we've got we're just literally building a contingency to try to, we've done a couple hundred change orders on a job, but it's still a net for the client.
Talk about that word contingency, because that's a word that's used a lot, and you either know it or you don't. And if you don't know it, you feel like you have to just assume you do. Tell everybody what that means to you.
Typically, so because plans are diagrammatic, we're in the real world and people make mistakes. I always recommend a contingency. It could be a brand new building. It could be a simple renovation build out. It could be a complex multi-story historical tax credit project. The contingency is me basically saying, client, if to be due diligent in, I'm just telling you based on historical data and facts that there's going to be unforeseen conditions and dollars that move. And so I'm recommending, it's not like you have to put it in my contract, but as you're doing your numbers, your model,
the underwriting model,
your tenant lease agreements, your whatever you're doing, you should carry this. And I typically will put that in writing. In most cases, we're negotiating our work or shortlisted, so I have the ability to present a proposal. I know on a hard bid, larger scenario, you can't do that. It's like one number, they don't care.
Yeah,
it's per plans and specs. So it's there as a recommendation based on experience to protect the client and his investment. That's it. It's not about because I missed something. It's about it's inevitable that it's going to happen because nothing's perfect. And it doesn't have to be some ridiculous amount of money. That thing will range and vary based on the size and complexity and what's going into a project. And
Duke Dotson in Richmond, developer, he does a lot of multifamily kind of stuff. He's got a Colonial Beach development that he's done a lot of like brand new ground up like condos. He's also done commercial adaptive reuse down there. He actually said that for small projects he has higher contingencies because he's not paying for the coordination drawings and the stuff like that. I was glad to hear a developer say that the person is actually taking the risk to take the loan to say, I know these smaller projects are going to have bigger surprises.
Yeah.
It's true.
No, it makes sense. I think because on a larger project, your percentages are always going to be less. You know, if your contingency on a $500,000, 5,000 square foot renovation is, 4%, you're not going to make a $10.5 million 7-story historical tax credit project, the contingency, that same percentage. It's going to be less based on the revenue that's bundled up within that idea.
So if you're listening in and this is getting weird and abstract, we're getting into the financial modeling of the construction industry. And this is actually why we want to talk to lenders, because what Cliff is talking about is how a developer is able to get the money for construction. And that is to say, I have this many square feet that's going to produce this much revenue and I want to do this thing. And this thing's going to cost this much money. So can I pay this loan over this period of time at this interest rate for this much money knowing that I'm going to get them this much revenue. And you make a model of how much you think it might cost you. And you have no engineer, nothing yet. You're guesstimating. It's like predicting the weather. It's like us doing HVAC calcs. It's literally predicting the weather. So the financial model is as much an HVAC calc as anything else. So contingency is your measure, your best guess to how much risk there will be from people making mistakes or something go out of hand or assumption you missed. And they can vary from project to project. And so what's interesting is how much of that's done to underwrite and fund everything before any subject matter expert comes close to the project. To me, that's fascinating and why I want to talk to the lenders, because it's like, how are you guys, what are you even using? I guess historical data, but I mean,
well, I know this. They continue to use whatever metric or model that they're using, and the bottom line is that they don't lend a dime over what their model spits out.
Yeah.
So if a developer has a project and the bank's not going to give him everything that he wants, he's going to have to come up with that money through a different leveraging or other asset or cash or something to offset it.
yeah, which may jeopardize the lending also, because part of it is how much you already have owed.
Tied up somewhere else.
Yeah.
But I will say in most cases, nobody's lending the total amount that you need.
So, wow. Okay. So engineers need to know this, and people in the industry that are technical experts need to understand lending. That's why we want to bring in lenders is financial modeling. It needs to be understood, and what we do and why we do it needs to be understood. And we are just so obsessed with moisture removal, like I said earlier, but also there's a reason why people don't want your DOAS. So I'm starting to understand that we need to be trained in understanding how to consult the business itself to say, we got a cigar bar, for example, a hookah bar rather. They have 2 floors of hookah smoking and a commercial kitchen. I mean, can you imagine the cost of this HVAC? It's going to be outrageous, the code requirements. I told them, I'm going to design exactly what you asked for. Just so you know, it won't be over-engineered. I know you're going to hear that word. It won't be. The solution is changing your business model, not changing the engineering. Do you need 2 floors of hookah, or can you get away with the first floor of hookah? That's what you need to do, is rethink the 40-foot hood you thought you wanted, Mr. Chef. Could you get it down to an 8-foot hood? Guarantee I can make it work with that. It's engineers forget, like I said, we just engineer, we're responding to what somebody said they're going to do.
Right.
And we forget that part of the consulting is to say, do you understand the cost of what you're asking for?
Yep. I recently witnessed something similar where the architect had mentioned to the client, well, if you do this, do you think you're going to increase the value enough to get your return back in the future when you sell it? And, I'm kind of looking like, well, there goes this deal. But I appreciated it, because that is part of what you're talking about. That was somebody that was being due diligent, asking on the front end, do you really need this? Is it necessary? And it really wasn't. And so I'm glad that the outcome came. I would have never expected that question or comment to come from the architect.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I seen it. And it got me to, so I witnessed it firsthand. It was, I thought it was great,
The probability of success for a restaurant is directly tied to the length of the hood. How long your hood is determines how likely you'll be able to afford the thing you're doing. And the sooner I can say that, the better. And that truly is the difference. We got a project in Portsmouth. They wanted this big long hood, and I was like, there's 0% chance. I mean, I'll engineer it and I'll charge you for it and I'll expect to be paid. But there's a 0% chance what you'll need for what you want to put under that hood works. I said, just go to Chipotle. Look at how much money they do every single day with a little 10-foot hood. They don't mess around. It's just 2 flat tops or whatever, and they're just cranking it out. Right. Now, there's a problem in the restaurant industry, because you get involved with cooking because of an art form, kind of like music and art. You don't do it because you want to boil down your art to something as, pedestrian as a Chipotle, right? You're an artist. You want all your tools available to you. And so that I understand, but at the same time, do you want your it open, or do you not want it open? And I'm realizing only recently, and you understand as a business owner, like that this is about business consulting with people and their ideas.
Yeah.
When you choose assembly occupancies, they're expensive. The less of the assembly occupancy, the better,
Yeah.
Yeah. I think people taking heed to the advice that they're given. Me and Metro Mechanical, we VE'd it by doing this. We brought in more fresh air. We put in a dehumidifier, and then we put in an exhaust fan to meet the criteria for Star Cycle. They have not had no issues on it. But this is also a multi-story building, first floor retail at Summit Point in Chesapeake. And it's an air exchange requirement based on how many bicycles were in that bicycle room. And so we had to increase the makeup air being brought in. Well, because it's not conditioned through a VAV or the DOAS, it was going to bring in more moisture. So we ended up literally getting a dehumidifier, inside of that room for that displacement of the additional makeup air plus the exhaust fan. So I know probably not from an engineering standpoint, but that is something that I'm telling you, it went from $230,000 to $54,000 for the package. But those are the type of things that we did have to draw it up, and we did have to share it with Pace, and they weren't happy about it, but it met the demand, and they had the direction from the tenant, et cetera. But it's those types of collaborations of like, well, they didn't really tell us what the pitfall was going to be. What is our exposure? Well, if the dehumidifier goes down, what do? Maybe you should have a backup dehumidifier, like what happens? Yeah. And so there's definitely the protocol of, issues, but.
You're right, though. I mean, that is a great condition where the people aren't there. You're talking about the bike area, right? Or how many people are in there? Is it an occupied people area?
So the whole space was about 4,000 square feet, and then there was this closed off sound room. We had to make this fucking crazy sound room because of the music that they pump in this, and the apartments above.
Oh.
So that was a little different than if it were just in a strip center. Yeah. But there was a code that when we said, well, here's the price for one, here's the price for other. We don't want to do either. We want to do this. The MEP engineer was pissed, and he started extracting out little pieces of the code. You had to have this amount of exchange based on the activity of the person being on the bike or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And so, so all we really did was, and I didn't run the calculations, a mechanical guy did, Metro Mechanical, but.
Shout out Metro Mechanical.
Yeah, but they definitely were able to, take the existing equipment, air handler that was there, change the duct size, bring in additional makeup air, put in two larger exhaust fans. That was the exhaust exchange, and the additional makeup air was the moisture was being removed by the dehumidifier.
Yeah, I mean, a DOAS is basically a giant dehumidifier.
Right.
It just dehumidifies the outside air before it comes in.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah, they had a variable exhaust fan, I think, was the other option. Like, basically, they were taking all of this additional makeup air, conditioning it before it got to the room.
Yeah, that's like a DOAS.
Well, there was two systems, and I could be using the wrong equipment. Yeah. But there was one scenario that they had designed and drew, and then there was the DOAS one.
Oh, I got you. They might have been doing demand control ventilation or something. We do that a lot to try to get the cost down. Yeah, maybe it was something like that. It was a 3-letter acronym. I don't remember. Well, yeah, that just presents the challenge. No, to defend the engineer in this scenario, if they had started with the VE option that you guys solved and it went wrong, now it's the engineer fucked up. Yeah. And so we're terrified to do anything that other than what we know works. And we know that DOAS works. That's the one thing I can stand behind and say you're never going to have problems with it. But these other ideas, the Frankensteins that show up, see, we were willing to collaborate and get them, but like I said, it costs money to save money. So like, all right, we can redesign it at a fee. It will save this much money, but I won't do it until you realize it's a feature reduction and you acknowledge the risk on paper, and then I'm doing it. We did a 2-story research lab, life sciences lab. They had a huge DOAS, and there's no other way to do it. Yeah, that was the way to do it. Yeah, because they got all that exhaust, all the lab hoods and stuff like that. Yeah. We are here. Can you tell us? Back up. Was your jacket off before we went out? Or was it on? I've been taking it on and off, but it was off. All right. You want me to take my jacket off for the casting couch? Like this.
I just don't want to cut to you.
Camera magic.
Having your jacket. Just have it on. Have it where it was before we left.
I don't remember.
Rewind the tape, Carter.
Yeah, run it back.
Now we
So,
see the perfectionism.
Are you telling me to take my clothes off right now again?
Yeah, this is the director telling you to take your clothes off.
Okay.
All right.
I've never done this before.
Okay. It's okay.
I'm a little uncomfortable. Okay, like this. Is this good?
Yeah, just there's shit all over the place. You know, it's
Yeah.
fine.
We're in an apartment complex, a historic renovation, and a really beautiful job that you've done. And we'll go walk around and look at it. But there's available places to check out. These are apartments. Can you tell us a little bit about the project, what it was, what it became?
This was a project that it's an existing 7-story, was originally built in the early 1900s as a office building, and it had been many different things over the years, and through tax abatement, historical tax credit program, they've been able to convert it to fulfill the need for single dwellings and bring the building back to its former glory, if you will, by preserving it.
Yeah.
And the total duration was about 12 months, and it's 45 units, first floor amenities. We're currently in the clubhouse space. There's a gym, leasing office, and there's different methods to treat the tax credit projects based on what they were before and what you're converting them to, or what they're being recycled as. Typically, the primary function of the tax credit is really to offset the additional cost it takes to preserve and rehabilitate something than it does to. Well, actually, it's cheaper to tear out a window and put a new one.
Yeah.
But if the windows have made it 100 years and they're not deteriorated, beyond repair, there's an additional cost to try to preserve and restore that. So
Yeah.
that's what the credit is applied for the developers. There's state and federal credits that get applied, and it essentially is, the possibility of getting, kind of a coupon for repurposing a building instead of demolishing it and, starting from scratch. So.
Yeah, Melissa, architect we work with, she doesn't do ground up anymore because of how many buildings exist that need to be, like, the materials have already been used. Try, but it's expensive.
It is.
It's expensive to do that.
It is. I think that the cost per unit or apartment is higher than if you were to do a brand new, multifamily apartment community.
Yeah.
And I think the tax credit kind of helps offset that.
Yeah.
For me, being, it doesn't just have to be Norfolk, but I'm born and raised in Norfolk. And so any of these projects that are in Norfolk, like York Street Apartments, is, it's just awesome to see something that the tradespeople from that period, it can be revived and repurposed and reused.
Yeah.
It doesn't change the visual landscape of of what it's been for, since 1920 or 1919, something like that. 1924 it's one of those. We do a good amount of historical tax credit projects in multiple cities. It's something that I got exposed to prior to starting Ringenberg in 2013. I was a superintendent on one of them, and it was just real nostalgic, really cool to see the kind of methods and what they did, how they put things together, and just the fact that we're able to really recycle and repurpose something is, probably one of the better parts of what we do, for me. And but it's a good project, and it's a whole team collaboration. We had the developer owner Marathon Development Group, along with Time Off Moss and Roach Engineering Consultants.
Yeah.
And essentially we And then our internal team, supers, PMs, PAs. It was a good project. On a building like this that was prior a office building that gets converted to apartments, really your core of the building has to be preserved. The exterior and your core. So your main lobby, elevator, stairs, all your common corridors. But beyond that, there's a little bit more flexibility on the layouts, unit layouts, et cetera. If it were built originally as dwelling, then you're really maintaining a lot of the interior partitions, casing, trim. It goes beyond just the common core areas. We're doing one of those in Portsmouth right now on High Street. It's the old professional building. It's a 8-story right on High Street.
Oh, cool. We're on High Street. We got a 3-story building.
Yeah.
8 something. 340 High Street?
Yes, 340.
Yeah. We're doing that one.
Yeah.
Like an old art school or something.
It's on the corner.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. We actually did the one right over here with Monument Development.
Yeah, we need to go check the pilot building.
The pilot, Virginia Pilot.
Okay.
Yeah, they did that. Turned it into multifamily.
Yeah.
That was crazy. They're a good contractor too. They're good problem solving, kind of like you. Like
they've done a lot of these types of historical tax credit projects, so they definitely know, the regulatory requirements, and just the idea that it's preserving what's been here, and it's just like anything else. I mean, everything that we do, it takes energy. So if we're just building a new building with all new building components, it's going to be cheaper, it's quicker, but it doesn't have the same effect on, Norfolk's been established for so long. That's all you can really do at this point is either tear down and build something new or rehabilitate what was there.
Well, you talk about coordination. I think a lot of people have this assumption when they come to us and say, we're trying to keep everything, that the engineering fee should be smaller.
Yes.
But it's not at all. Like we get pinched. We're like, well, it's existing. We're trying to reuse it. Like, well, I'm the engineer. I have to make that determination for you, whether or not you can reuse it. You may not be able to. This little 5-ton unit in an assembly space may not work.
Well, the benefit, the benefit or the thing that I've seen time and time is that they're not very restrictant on life safety in the MEPs. So typically on all these projects, it's all new MEPs, which is good.
Yeah.
The constraint of how we get that system to work within the type of construction and space available and what can be exposed and what cannot be exposed.
Like we got registers over here, whereas if we were perfect, we might put them at the window and it's probably a tax credit limitation.
Right. Yeah. So anything within on the first floor, I believe, is 20 foot back. You can't have a modification.
Yeah.
Again, that is also, I don't want to say subject to the reviewer, but there are people that are working for the state and in federal level to work with third-party consultants, which, in this area we use Commonwealth Preservation Group.
I think they do.
That's where
pretty much everything.
They're at the top of of this product.
Yeah,
and so that's a whole nother design coordination that has to be dealt with, particularly with MEPs.
Yeah. We got one where we got that one on restaurant assembly use, and they said on the roof, "Can I get this tiny little spot for your HVAC?" I'm like, we got it to work. That's Jacob Colby, who used to be at WPA, right? I don't know if you've ever worked with him, but it was his project. He went on his own, and it was these constraints.
He's in the Norfolk area too.
Yeah. That's the rail yard. There's like a rail yard development.
Oh yeah.
He's doing all of that.
He's like basically the architect on all that. And
that's great.
Called Birdies. It's like a golf facility, and then they have a commercial hood, and then it's a historic tax credit project. So there's this tiny spot on the roof. They want everything to go. It's a challenge.
Yeah. We typically have to build like a mock-up of where the rooftop equipment's going to be, and so the third-party consultant, Commonwealth, have to provide those shots and angles. That get approved or disapproved, and we have to come up with other things. But, I think it's all part of problem solving, and, it's the stuff tends to work out. I think the bigger constraint maybe is like how they built buildings and what systems they use to heat and cool are different then than they are now. And so whether it's a reaction of a building or, you don't have the same R value as what we're currently building at. And so, I think the design aspect is different.
Yeah, and you're not required by code to replace windows or deal with that, and that can create a mechanical nightmare.
Right.
But I think at this point, although I did want to talk FF&E, we'll walk through here in a minute. And Cliff Ringenberg from Ringenberg Construction on the Blueprint tour.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for talking to us, man.
Yeah, thanks.
We'll have to get together and record some music next time.
Let's do it.
I'm having to hide behind the couch as I do this last
Yeah, I'm gonna
extra.
give people a shot. Here we go.